Hello and welcome to episode number 496 of the HaskinCast Podcast. I am your host, Scott Haskin, here with our returning champion, my friend, director, and we're going to talk to him about this amazing creative program that he has that is perfect for a lot of people to check out and learn from, John Reynolds. John, how are you?
I'm great. How are you? It's
I'm
good to be
doing
here.
I'm doing great, thanks. It's great to have you back. It hasn't been that long since you've been on the show, and ever since we talked last time, I'm like every week or so, I'm like, man, I got to get John back on the show.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
I
It's
always
nice.
enjoy our conversations. Um,
Yeah.
you told me about your program, Workshop Your Truth, Unlock the Art of Storytelling. What can we expect from this program? Who is it geared towards?
Well, it's storytelling. Well, never mind that. Well, I'm sorry about that. Here's the deal. The idea here is that in the area that I'm in at the moment, lots of people like to tell stories, and I've become aware of the fact that it's a very popular thing here, but it's a very popular thing nationally.
Mhm.
And so there's lots of people who are entertain the idea of doing it. And there are people who do it that want to be better at it. And there's public speakers who would like to be better public speakers. There's actors who would like to be better actors. In essence, they're all on the same journey.
Mhm.
And so basically what I want to do is, help them have a, more authentic expression, something they can dig in deeper with themselves in those areas that they have it, but they're not producing it. So yeah, it's a marvelous opportunity actually to work with people.
I think there's such a joy in watching someone's expression. If you're telling a story directly to somebody and getting to see their expression unfold as you're, giving different sections of the story or trying to get a certain reaction or emotion out of them and watching them actually hit that reaction that you're trying to get. There's a real magic and joy in that for me.
Oh, um, I just love talent, period.
Mhm.
And when I see somebody authentically producing something in their particular craft, I just fall in love with them. I don't need to know their name. I don't need to know their gender. I don't need to know nothing.
Mhm.
They're just, it's a beautiful part of a human being. And the opportunity to be able to express that to other people in a way that you can share who you are emotionally in the moment with them is a really wonderful experience. And there's a great reward in that because people are really available to hear you tell your story. It's
Right.
wonderful.
And it's amazing when you think about how far back storytelling goes. I mean, we found early men cave paintings where they're, describing battles or what the state of their camp was. And, then you look at the Egyptians where it got very advanced. And, it's amazing how far storytelling really goes.
I've kind of gone through this particular period in my life, which I'm out of at this moment in time, because things change, where I put a lot of looking into these kinds of things. And my particular position on that is that we told stories first. I think they did it in dance and sound.
Mm.
But when we started articulating, it started becoming stories. And so we've been telling stories for literally, at least 50, 60,000 years. We've been have cognitive conscious. And it- we're the only animal on the earth, the only biological entity, as far as we know at this point in time, including birds and bees and everything,
Mm.
that does this, that tells stories. Our, our entire social structure is created from stories. Our legal system, our political system, our religious systems, all of this stuff is stories. And theater, I think, is like I've said this before, the voice of humanity.
Mhm.
And because there's one everywhere, and it's the only place that's not inhibited, in theory, by those particular subjects that we've created. and they play into it. But the fact of the matter is that's the voice. That's where it is.
Mhm.
Um, and where we express ourselves, we learn about ourselves, we question ourselves, we question our future, we question our past, we push propaganda, we do all these kinds of things from the theatrical point of view. So storytelling for us as an animal is extraordinarily
Yeah.
important.
Now that you're saying that, it kind of makes me wonder when a story gets passed on from person to person, it's never the same story that it started as, right?
Yeah,
Each
yeah.
person will add their own thing. Is that embellishment just part of that natural desire to tell a story that each person has that adds their own flavor to it?
um, well, I think it starts off with, as you said, people really have a limited memory
Mhm.
when something's taking place. Depending on how many times they hear the story, will be how much better they know the story. And then there's going to be those spots where they don't know, but they know where it's going. So you kind of fill it in. And I mean, that's what AI does today. It does the
Right.
same thing,
Hmm.
you know. So anyway, I think that's what happens. That's where the embellishment comes from.
Hmm.
Because you're right. You tell a story to one person, they whisper it to the next, and there's a difference.
Right.
And because you take that on, so therein is a challenge, I guess, as a writer, is
Hmm.
to get enough for those people to reflect on your story. That's one of the great things I always kind of loved about Bob Dylan.
Hmm.
He's what's that song mean? I don't know. What does it mean? Because it's you. It's not me. What it meant to me is not what it means to you. So, there's nothing really other than we both had the experience of it.
Right.
So,
It
yeah,
seems like at least 5 times in the last 3 or 4 weeks, I've had the occasion to say, while I'm not a big fan of Bob Dylan's music, I do think he is one of the greatest storytellers we've ever had.
yeah. I personally, I like him. I liked
Mhm.
his early stuff. I mean, of course, I was a lot younger then, and it was like different, but I liked his voice then an awful lot. I followed him through the years, and there's moments when I go, I'm not there, Bobby," or "Yeah, I'm here. You got me, Mr.
Mhm.
Dillon." you know. Uh, um, so, but he's a wonderful poet, and he has a wonderful, unique way of expressing his poetry,
Mhm.
and I enjoy. He's an awesome artist, painter, sculptor. He does the work. He's
Oh,
still doing the work.
absolutely. Yeah, he is. And I love that he's not stopped in all this time.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
Well, what do you think it is in us that I mean, I'm a creative person. I like to think anyway. I mean, I've written books, I've written music, and done a few stories and things over the years. But what is it that you think that makes us desire to make up art and share it? Is it an inherent need to just do something outside of the normal routine of life, or is it the idea of bringing joy to other people through story?
Hmm. That's a very interesting question. And where I go with that is, what is our biological need in that?
Mm.
What is important to us physically and expressing ourselves in that particular uh, idea, field,
Mhm.
art? For it really is anything. It's to me, it's anything. It's a craft that requires mastering, frankly,
Sure. Yeah.
right?
Mm.
Um, but I think the answer that came to me when you were asking that, and I thought about that, I thought, maybe it comes from the fact that we are here for a very specific reason, very specific, just like every other biological entity on this planet, and that is to procreate.
Mhm.
And so, in that desire to procreate, I would think maybe is the idea of leaving an imprint of yourself. Somebody told me once, if you work in stone, in 1,000 years when they find it, they might not know who you were, but they'll know what you are.
Mm. That is
You
very
know,
true.
and I I took that to heart. I go, yeah, there's a lot of truth in that statement. Um, so that's why, I think it would most to me right now in the moment, that makes a lot of sense to me that it would come from that.
Mhm.
And that's a pretty exciting idea to me,
Yeah,
because it shows you how organic the creative process is to you. Every one of us
mhm.
has that. It's a part of who we are. It's like our spiritualism, for
Right.
example. So, it can't be taken away from you if you don't want it to be,
That's very
right?
true. I had a friend who's an actress who said to me once you've done something, doesn't matter what it is, but once you've finished some form of art that's available for people to experience, you're immortal at that point. You won't go on, but your imprint will. And I thought,
Yes.
that's a really interesting thing to think about. I think the problem that I have with it is that we're so oversaturated with content now that there's so much. I think it's hard to find a way to cut through it and to have whatever you've done get noticed.
Hmm. I heard, I think it might have been even Tom Petty. Yeah, I think, I'm not positive of this, but somebody in his ilk
Mhm.
say, it could have been Alice Cooper. He's kind of like that. It say that once you get a hit, you're in.
Mm.
Now if you can stay in, that's another thing.
Right.
But you're at the party,
Hmm.
so to speak, right? You're
Yeah.
hitting all the guest venues, concerts, stages, television channels in local areas.
Hmm.
You're going nationwide, as they used to say.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So how does the program work? Is it interactive with you? Is it a video series? What can people expect?
Well, what it is at this moment in time is the people are all bringing in a 5 minute, basic 5 minutes story or 5 minutes of a story.
Mhm.
And so that's and then everybody has their own material to work with. We're not learning something new. They should already have a good idea about this story. But I anticipate there will be those who come in. For example, I know one of the people expressed a thing about acting. See, so there's a person who might not be prepared for that. So we'll see what that works out like. But she'll be taken care of.
Mhm.
Um, so and then they're all to tell their story. That's the very first thing we're going to do. Um, and then I think I might do an improv thing that I learned um, called the Song for Life, where you tell a story that's happened to you in a day, just a couple of minutes.
Mhm.
And I won't spoil it from then on. Then I will just go through each one of them and work with them on their piece
Mhm.
and uh, observe them and share with them what my observations are and make suggestions and applaud them,
Mhm.
when because, people are talented. You can't
Yeah.
assume nothing. They'll surprise you. I'm shocked, frankly, at the amount of talent there is in small towns. Um, it's extraordinary. It's really extraordinary. And I mean, when you really look at the charts
Mhm.
in America, you see that actually there's a heck of a lot of people on the chart, especially in country music, come from little bitty places.
Oh yeah. I would think though that some of the best creatives that we have, we don't know we have because they're people that either don't really consider themselves creative.
Yeah, yeah,
Ask
yeah,
any mother and they'll say, "Oh, I'm not a creative person." Really? What was that thing that you just did for your kid to entertain him for the last 2 hours? You
yeah,
are a
yeah,
creative, I guarantee it. But they won't
yeah,
see it. Or I think people that are afraid to show what they can do. Just
yeah,
that either the fear of rejection or the fear of it not being good enough or that self-conscious thing that gets to you. So I have a feeling there's a lot of great talent out there that we just don't even know about.
yeah. I agree with you 100% because I've witnessed it.
Mhm.
And, like I said, I'm amazed at it. And I, I also, I forgot what I was going to say. Something popped in my mind when you were saying that. I was also thinking that there's more opportunities for something like that to happen for people today than ever before.
Oh yeah.
And I think the point that you're kind of making here is it's fear of taking that shot because I know that those people like singers, for example, who know they just don't, they just sing occasionally, and people come up and say, "My God, you're so good," and they go, "Oh no, well, thank you," and yeah, but um, if they just would go to an open mic
Mhm.
to take a chance
Right.
and see what happened, that would be the very first step. If I was working with somebody that would be what I would want to do, and not a big one, just something small. Break into it gently, get your toes wet, get a feel for it.
Right.
Because frankly, when you get in the water, it's a lot of fun.
Hmm.
You're there, you're singing your heart out, or you play your heart out, or you act your heart out, whatever it is, juggle it out, and because you enjoy it and you want people to enjoy it,
Right.
So
Well, I think
yeah,
too, if you create something and you create it, you continue to develop it because you're enjoying it. If you enjoy it, there's a good chance somebody else will too.
absolutely. There's no doubt about that. I see it all the time. I mean, I will bring up the Dead Quilter Society to play that Dev and Chandra have just mounted.
Mhm.
It's a huge hit, and looks like it's going to go on the road.
Oh, great.
And it's called the Dead Quilter Society, but it's just it's not what it's really about.
Mhm.
And what it's really about, well, one of the things is because it's layered very well, is about ripples
Mhm.
and the things that you do in your life that have effect on other people. And how, well, for example, what happens in history shakes on down how the waves finally get to us.
Mhm.
And there's people around you and around me, around you, us, that we've done things for that would say, man, if you hadn't have done that, I don't know what would have happened to me. That was
Yeah.
so great,
Hmm.
you know.
Sure.
And I always was, oh wow, well, thank you very much for that. You know what I mean?
Right.
Same thing.
Hmm.
Uh, but yeah. Anyway, yeah, I forgot where I was going with that. I'm sorry.
Well, and of course, you're talking about Dev Ross and Chandra Jefferson, who have both been on the show individually and together, talking about the movie that they've been trying to get funded for, anti-bullying,
uh,
which is a
yeah,
very
weird.
needed
Yeah.
message. I guess, for me and John, you've seen a lot of stuff in your life. I guess I'm just kind of shocked in some ways that we're not further along as a society, that we're still bullying people. There's still people trying to feel better about themselves by bringing other people down instead of, we haven't found that unified way of just working together to create a better world. Growing up, did you think that we would ever get there?
Wow. There's another one, boy. You seem to throw out the fingers today. Um,
You bring this out of me. I'm just going to say that.
uh, well, let me just say that I've learned, and very recently, actually, considering my age, that at 4.5 years old, I was hijacked. Something happened to me, and it changed me from who I could have been to who I was. And I don't see how that can't be true of humanity. Because I believe there's a lot of people who got hijacked somewhere in their youth in some fashion or way that turned them into the fearful people that we are. And so I think that we got hijacked, and I know exactly in my mind what happened to me and why it happened and why we're still suffering because of the continual abuse of this particular um, what do they call that? Um, I don't know, one of the big, social structures in life,
Okay.
and and we're never going to get out of it until we collectively, and I mean, it could be a first monkey. I mean, IGA or AI is, and those people are working on that, and the military and all those people around the world and all their different governments. That's where they're headed with this, and it's huge. And I mean, that's what Elon Musk is all about. Let's, you know, make it automatic so people
Right.
mistakes don't get involved in it. I think, um, there's a bit of naivety in that
Yeah.
personal view, in my opinion, which is rather obvious.
Well, it
Um,
seems to me like people want the easy out, right? Everybody's like, what's the path of least resistance to get where I want to be? And there isn't one for that. You have to do the work and consciously change your focus and change how you treat people. And, if you see something wrong, if you can steer it in a better direction or teach somebody, I think we all need to be teachers to some extent. Any knowledge that we have that it can be a positive influence on somebody, even if it's not just showing them how it can be instead of necessarily telling them or forcing them
mhm,
into something, just
mhm,
showing them that, hey, you know what, you can be nice to people, or you get through life without being this way or that way.
mhm,
And that's what I love about what you're doing, because you're focusing on art. Art is something that will bring people there. If you're flexing those creative muscles and you're seeing a benefit to that, like you're seeing how people react to it, you're seeing people enjoying it or being uplifted by your work or just getting out aggression or whatever the thing is, you're affecting people positively, then you're going to want more of that.
mhm, mhm,
And that's what I'd like. I guess that's what I'd like to see more of in society. So thank you for helping be a part of that change.
mhm. No, thank you. I appreciate that. I mean, just accepting the idea uh, that I'm an artist is in itself, because I got to tell you, frankly, I've always had a problem with people who call themselves an artist.
Mhm.
And that is, to me, art is a subjective thing.
Mhm.
I'm a craftsperson. Uh, I'm I have a craft that I'm trying to apply. I have a craft that I'm developing so that I can be, good at what I do, because I do authentically love seeing people have those moments, as you described earlier, where they just go, "Wow, that was good.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. That
Mhm.
was a good experience." Because it really brings home who we are in our heart and soul, frankly, that we're so stray of at this particular moment in time. So, yeah, Sean Young, I don't remember if you remember her. She was in that Harrison Ford sci-fi movie,
Oh, Blade Runner?
Blade Runner. Yeah, she was the robot girl.
Oh, yeah.
And she told me she was it was in Sedona at the time. She told me that people were taking, she's an artist, and people were, and artists and people were piling on her and stuff. Like, Sean had her peculiarities, but still at that point, and I said, she goes, and she called herself an artist again. I go, Sean, think about what you're doing here. You're putting a target on your back. You're saying, look at me, I'm an artist. Well,
Mhm.
art is a subjective thing. Craft is not subjective. I mean, in its application, it's very objective, but I mean, in its what you're going for is certainly subjective. But bottom
Right.
line is, it's a craft.
Mhm.
People can't take craft away from you if you are a dedicated craftsperson. You're going to keep working at it. You're going
Right.
to keep refining it. You're going to keep making it better, and you will know when you get there. I can't tell you, hey, you're right, Scott. You'll go,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
okay, well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, see, so yeah, I think that's the deal there. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. But as a director, I mean, you're part of the creative process, because you make so many decisions as a director on any project that really affect the shape of it. So, Do you think a lot of directors think of themselves as creatives?
Absolutely. I
Mhm.
don't know why they wouldn't, because that's what it is. It's a creative process.
Right.
I mean, even if you're assigned an episode on the most popular TV series, there's so many restrictions for a director now. For example, you come onto the show, you can't direct the star. I
Mhm.
mean, they've been there.
Yeah.
There's 4, 5, 6 seasons. You're going to tell
Mhm.
them how to play their character?
Right.
No, that
Yeah.
dog won't hunt. Who
Mhm.
do you get to direct? The guest. See, so you're limited. The other thing you get to do is you get to say, "Oh, look, can we put the camera over here?" Because you're working with a director of photography who's got what 13, 8, 12 seasons in the show, and you're going to
Right.
tell him. I've
Mhm.
seen, I've seen DPs say, "No, you can't shoot that shot." And a famous one used to put his hand on the camera when he didn't want a shot, and he would shake the camera so it would be
Wow.
bad in the lab. And then in dailies he would blame his operator,
Of
and the
course.
operator apologized profusely. It will never happen again. You know, you
Well,
know.
that's a good point because you're really locked into the continuity of however that show is created, right? So let's say
Right.
that it's season 6 of The Office and they're like, "Hey John, we would love it if you came in and directed an episode." What do you really get to do?
Well, like I said, the big stars, and by the way, that's going to be determined how they think of themselves on the set, not how they're build,
Mhm.
because one down here might think I'm a bigger star than them, and I don't have time for this shit.
Right, yeah.
But the real actors, and generally speaking, supporting roles are people who are really working on the craft as a rule, unless they've been doing it for a lot of years and they've established, their shtick, so to speak.
Mhm.
So that you get to work with those, and then, like I said, the guest person, because they're bringing skills in, so you're not teaching them how to act.
Right.
You're working with them on having the best experience in producing the material they need to produce. So
Mhm.
you're watching after them, you're making sure they're in the right places, they're getting covered at the right moments. You know, you're taking care of them. You
Right.
know, and you have all the paintbrushes. You got the camera, you got the lights, you got the makeup artist, you got these things. If you know what you're doing, DPs will work with you all day long because then you know why? Because they didn't have to. It's a free check. Put the camera here, give me a pull back here. I want to open into that. Okay, boys, get it.
Mhm.
You
Right.
know,
Right.
as opposed to no, sorry, I'm not going to do that. Um, so really, it's an opportunity to help those people who want it to have that opportunity, to make that opportunity available for them
Yeah.
to have that experience. And that's my job. And when I'm directing, that's what I do, whether it's theater or film or commercials or whatever.
Mhm.
It's the same thing I'll apply to my storytelling workshop. That's the essence of it.
Right.
That's why
I,
we
I I want to get your thought on something now that I'm thinking about The Office, because there's one thing that's always bothered me about that show, and I want to ask you this as a director. Uh, the whole premise of the show being that it's a documentary that's being shot, right? So you've got people that are looking into the camera, and it's okay because people in real life might do that. They're not, in the show, they're not actors. So, but the one thing is that when people would laugh at something that was naturally funny within the story, they would cut that out and do another take. And I'm thinking, isn't that taking away some of the realism of life? Because people would laugh in a lot of those situations.
um, well, it's a kind of a hard call, actually, because a story has layers to it.
Mhm.
I mean, if it's done properly, done well, it's going to have some layers to it. There's several people interacting in a scene, and each one of them has an intention, a motive, and a place to go, and they're coming from somewhere. So that particular moment might not work uh, for the arc as it moves down the line,
Mm.
for that character to be cracking up at that particular point in time,
Right.
because they're going to die or something. I don't know. So, you
Right.
know,
Mhm.
just as an example, of that. Then there are what we used to call happy accidents,
Mhm.
where something like that happens and it's just perfect and you keep it, and it works. It just works. That's why it goes, yeah, that works.
Right.
That one I attribute to the muses. The muses do that. It just works.
Mhm.
you
Yeah,
know.
and that is a beautiful thing too. I've heard, I listen to a lot of commentaries and interviews with directors and filmmakers, and one of the best things about just dealing with human beings and spontaneity are happy accidents, because a lot of times they'll be like the one line that makes the film, or that makes a character likable.
My process, the way I think of it is my analogy has always been that I look at it like I'm on the face of a clock, and I'm at 6 o'clock, and my project's objective is 12 o'clock.
Mhm.
And the minute I step inside of that dial, I'm in the creative world. It's its own organic process.
Mhm.
I'm only a traveler in it. So as I'm going through the process of working towards 12, I'm holding on to the apron string of that creative process. And I'm letting it lead me where it goes. So it gets to be kind of moment to moment as you're doing this. And,
Mhm.
and of course you're cataloging, you go, that works with here, that. And so I don't try to control it. I look at every opportunity as an opportunity because of that very reality. It's the accidents at work. And so there's an opportunity here for an accident. If we walk on a line, it's a good thing. And uh, so, yeah, working for that objective. Uh, I lost myself again. What happens is I get to thinking and I go, and I think and I realize, there's something here that I haven't really investigated thoroughly before I start chatting about it, I guess.
Yeah,
Uh,
I do that. And I realize I'm putting you on the spot with these questions. I'm sorry for that. I don't write
it's
questions
okay.
down when I interview people. Very rarely do
It's
I
okay.
ever. But I just find that the process so fascinating. And you think as a creative, okay, we've written our story, we've got all the bases covered, all the characters, the arcs, everything makes sense. It all fits together in a beautiful little puzzle. And then somebody says a line that in a way that changes the meaning. And you're like, oh, I like that better.
Well, that kind of goes back to what I was actually saying is
Mhm.
that the thing I don't try to control the deal because I know for a fact that wherever it lands, 11 or 2 or 1 to 1201,
Mhm.
it's going to be the story. It's going to be the piece.
Yeah,
Because if you don't trust in the creative process, I don't know what kind of chance you've got, really. You're just
that's right.
manufacturing stuff.
Mhm.
And and so that's the kind of thing somebody saying a line and everybody goes, "Whoa, whoa, man, that's an interesting. How does that work? Where
Mhm.
can we go with that?" And those are the creative discussions that take place
Mhm.
when um, you allow improvisation to work. In other words, I'm not a person who says memorize your lines because I don't think memorization is a healthy thing, frankly. And I say, if you say your line over, and over, and each time you say it, you ask yourself, what does that mean? What are the possibilities here? What are all the meanings that I could take from this? Where can I go with that? Each time you read it, you find something new about it.
Mhm.
You're finding the intention of the line. How does that line relate to what I'm saying next? Where am I going with this? And you guide yourself, through that process.
Right.
Um, you know, uh, that's a really awesomely creative time.
Mhm.
And when improvs do that, they know their intentions. So actors know their intentions. That's why it happens so much on big sets today.
Right.
All the time because they're talking intentions, they're not talking lines. The line gives it's a blueprint. They may say the line, they may not. It depends on the moment and what's taking place and how the other person reacts because you're actually listening. I've always said if I could have got my hands around the person that created the term actor, I would have choked them to death because we're not actors.
Right.
We're reactors. We're reacting. We put out something and we're reacting to it, and it's vice versa. It's a discussion taking place there.
Right. That's a good point. That's a good point.
You know.
Well, and I'm thinking what you're telling me reminds me of this visual I had. I would imagine you're familiar with Robert Patrick from Terminator 2 and how, he was the T-1000 with that stoic look on his face. Well, before he was the Terminator, he had a very small role in Die Hard 2, where he was one of the henchmen and he had three words to say, and that was it. It was a sitting duck. And I'm
Mhm,
thinking, okay, so he flies out to New York or wherever they're filming, and he's sitting in his hotel room the night before, and he's sitting on his bed, and he's going, a sitting duck, a sitting duck, a sitting duck, a sitting
mhm,
duck. And he's just
mhm,
playing out all these different variations and ways
mhm,
that he could say that. But what it's really going
mhm.
to come down to is when he's on set and they yell rolling, action, what he feels in that moment.
Exactly. And so for him, to do that in his motel room is ludicrous because he wouldn't do that. He's going to
Right.
have a drink, he's going to eat well, he's going to party, he's going to enjoy himself. And
Mhm.
when he gets there, he's going to get in the chair and make up and talk and visit with everybody and stuff like that. And in his back of his mind, he'll start putting himself in his mental condition of where his character's at. And then by the time he reads all this set, he's going to look over the script supervisor, what's my line? Or, oh, he'll have pages. He'll go, okay, that's my line. All right, and then the director and them will talk, and then here it's the setups, and it's your turn. My very first show I ever worked on when I came to Hollywood to be behind the camera was MASH
Really?
at Fox, and
Wow.
it's a huge stage. It's they have scaffolding up high that's 50, 60 feet above the floor. Okay,
Mhm.
and they'll somewhere in that area they put huge lights to make daylight, and they shoot these things like it's happening. You can really see it if you look,
Mhm.
like they're really outdoors.
Right. Yeah.
And so I'm sitting back there after all this theatrical training I've done and all this stuff, and I'm looking, and I realize all the actors are basically in the master shot phoning it in. They're
Really?
just kind of going through it. Okay, that's good. We got that. So then when they'd move in for the close-ups, they'd turn it on. When there's
Mm,
and I went, oh, okay, you
that's
know,
interesting.
uh, yeah, that's very clever because you're not burning it all.
Right.
It's spontaneous. It's coming from you.
But you're also
Uh,
not trying to steal the scene when the focus isn't on you.
no, well, no, that's comes again. Gets into the craft.
Mhm.
You have a character and they have a specific intention in what they're doing. If you're into thinking about that, then you're not really being in the character. I mean,
Right.
people rave about Jimmy Dean, and he was an upstager all the time.
Mhm.
He did everything. He upstaged everybody, but his back was to the camera. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Rock Hudson, Elizabeth Taylor and Giant. Oh yeah, he was cruel.
Mhm.
Uh, but yeah, you have it's a craft, and you know your part, and you are your best known when you can deliver that the way the story is, not you know trying to get attention.
Mhm.
That's something an
Yeah.
extra would have an opportunity. They try to get attention. You
Right.
know.
That's kind of why I was thinking about Robert Patrick in that way, because he really was an extra in the movie. I mean, yes, he did have a speaking role, but he wasn't, featured in any other way than just he was the one guy that was in control of the treadmill thing. And but that's kind of where a lot of actors, I think, would be like, "Oh, here's my chance."
My
You
question would
know?
be is, how did he get there? How did he get
Right.
on that set to be in that situation?
Right.
Believe me, that's very coveted stuff.
Yeah.
There's a shitload of unions that have issues with that stuff. So
Mhm.
I would submit that he might have been brought on as an extra for some reason, but he was always pretty much had an opportunity for that line. And the
Yeah.
fact that they kept it is the best part about it,
Mhm. Yeah,
because they could have
exactly.
cut it.
Mhm.
Would be the first, would it?
No. It's interesting. I actually interviewed years ago, I interviewed Loretta Swit, and I just found her to be just absolutely wonderful. But we spent the
Mhm.
entire hour, I don't think we talked about MASH, but maybe in the first couple minutes. And then we were talking about all the work that she does with, like the rescue dogs from the military and matching them up with their people that they were partnered with in battle and all that. Really amazing stuff that she's doing. But yeah, we barely
Mhm.
talked about MASH the whole time. What season would that have been? Henry Blake or Colonel Potter? Do you know?
I'm sorry, say that question again.
When you worked on the show, would that have been during like the Henry Blake era or the Colonel Potter era?
Colonel Potter. I
Oh,
think
that
that's,
that was
I
when it
think
got
so.
fun. That was when it was
Yeah.
fun for me. My favorite time on the show.
I'm kind of remembering. No, I don't. You know what? I actually can't tell you that for sure.
Hmm.
I mean, yeah, I don't remember actually.
Was it
Yeah, it's
do you
funny.
remember, was it intimidating though to be to get your first gig and have it be a show that was that big?
No, no, it was a fortunate opportunity. I was
Hmm.
glad to be there, and yeah, I mean, I wanted to be in the big show.
Hmm.
Um, I needed a job, and so I had an
Yeah.
opportunity, and I jumped on it, even though all the time that I was doing that kind of stuff, I was studying acting with Harry Master George or Peggy Fury, even Maria Gilbetti for a short period of time.
Wow.
Invited to other workshops of people at that time were really top-notch drama coaches. So
Mhm.
I always kept that particular element of myself uh, greased, I guess you might say.
Was that
I
really
kept doing it.
what you had wanted to do? You had wanted to be an actor?
No, actually, no. I was kind of pushed in that direction because I was young. I had a look that people thought was cool and all that kind of stuff.
Mm.
And but when I was at the Playhouse, actually, I got into the Playhouse because I did a summer session there at that time, the Pasadena Playhouse.
Mhm.
And so I went to the summer session because somebody said you could be a model in San Francisco, but you need to learn some acting. So
Mm.
I got down there and did that. But what happened is I just never went home. Once I
Mm.
got there and did it, I just didn't get home. I just went right into school. And so the at that particular moment, at that summer session, there was a young lady there who had to get up on the main stage and do something, and she was having a hard time. And it was a speech class actually.
Ooh.
And so I asked the instructor if I could talk to her.
Mm.
And he said, sure. And so I started walking down. He goes, where are you going? I said, I'm going to talk to her. And he let me. I got up on stage and I talked to her very quietly. And it was basically a pep talk. And I told her, you can do this stuff. You know, and so I said, so here's, think about this. And I thought about that, and I said, let's see how you do. So I went down and I sat down right in front of her on this theater. They were all sitting back towards the middle back.
Mm.
And she did the piece and it was stellar.
Nice.
And so I just got up and I walked back to where everybody else was seated. He goes, what did you do? And I said, I just talked to her. I knew right then and there what I wanted to do. I
Right.
wanted to do that
Mm.
all the time
Yeah.
because
That is
it's a
such an
wonderful exchange.
it is, and it's such an important role for a director to be able to do that. I mean, that's what the directing part is, right? I mean, there's all the production things that you're responsible for, but really the directing part comes down to getting people into a state where they can perform.
Exactly. Yeah, being there for them.
Yeah.
Yep, that's exactly it. In my opinion,
Hmm.
I mean, there's other guys and gals I'm sure out there that might have different opinions, but that's the way I feel about it.
Sure.
I like working with originals, writers, stories, I
Mhm.
should say. I've done that for a number of years now,
Mhm.
and I have a respect for the writer and their place, and I honor that. And sometimes I change lines on my own, but other times when it's an important line, it might change, an emotional thing, then I refer to the writer on it.
Mhm.
They're the one that holds the story. And my job is to help them get that story on the stage. And my tools are the actors to do that
Mhm.
and all the other things that go with it. So there's a relationship there. And that's another thing. In film, I could kind of do what I wanted to do in a way. I mean, if I did something episodic, I did. I had a script I had to shoot to, but I called all the camera and I pretty much did all that.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think that's yeah, that's a part of it all, isn't it?
Sure.
Um,
But I would
I
imagine that's helped make you a better director, though. Learning the acting side of it, you can then see through both eyes. You know how to direct actors because you know how to be an actor.
Yeah, I do. I believe that. I believe that. I believe that a famous, not so, it's a famous, actually a famous writer that I know, um, was working at Disney, and somebody came in and asked her to look at a script because he was having a problem with it.
Mhm.
So she looked at it, she went back and she said, "So see, it's this right here." And he goes, "Oh my God, yeah, man, that means I got to do this."
Mhm.
And so this happened repeatedly. And so she asked me one day, "Why do you think people are doing that?" And I said, "Well, you're an actor. You come from acting.
Mhm.
What's actor's job? Moment to moment. Know the beats.
Mhm.
Know the season. Know the signs when the streets are changing. That's writers are not given to that necessarily. I mean, it's far and few between.
Right.
And so they know that it's a moment to moment. The moment to moment. And when you change something biological, it's in a if there's a series of events, if you have tragedy or death, there's certain things you go through in order to get through it, the stages. If
Mhm.
you jump a stage, then you've messed your story up.
Right.
And that's what writers would have a tendency to do. They jump over a biological moment. When it was pointed out to them, they go, oh, okay. Because when they made that character made that biological moment happen, that changed the direction they were going in. Now they're in another way, venue, see?
Mhm.
So that's why you have to be careful when you start changing words and scripts and stuff. Because and that's why you go to the writer and go, where are you with this one? This is where all my feelings are. What are you thinking? Yeah,
Mhm.
that's good. Let's go with that. Or, well, I don't know about that. And then we have a discussion, we work it out.
Well, plus you have to think
Um,
about how that one change affects any other potential part of the story.
exactly, exactly. And um, that's exactly right. It gets right down to that,
Mhm.
because every moment it has a consequence and there's a natural progression to it.
Mhm.
And especially in storytelling, we
Yes.
have a lot of things that stack up on that side of the line, actually. So,
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Now I know that when I was working on my book trilogy, The Universal Chord, originally it started as a just like a 10-minute short film. I was going to pay everybody a few bucks out of my pocket. We'll shoot it over a weekend and just have some fun. And then my producer said, "Well, if you do it as a feature, I can get you some money." And I thought, "Well, why wouldn't I want to do it as a feature?" You know,
exactly.
but as I'm writing this, and I'm like, well, I know we can't get a helicopter, so I can't put that in there. And she said, put the helicopter in there. If you don't put it in there, it's never going to happen. We may not do it. We may strike it out of the story, but you definitely aren't going to have it if you don't put it in there. So everything you want, put in that screenplay. And I said, okay.
Hmm.
So I did that, and we did a couple of revisions. It never worked out, and I ended up just writing it as a book. But one thing that I thought about during this process is when people read this or watch it, if it's going to be a film, everything that happens in here is a reflection of me. And I started to get really self-conscious about things that I wanted to put in there because they might think, oh, that's what Scott thinks. Oh, that's how Scott thinks, or that's what Scott wants to happen. And I'm like, it's not.
Mm.
I'm telling a story. Do you find that writers tend to maybe sometimes fall into that self-conscious view of, maybe being afraid to tell the story they want because of what people might think of them?
I, I mean, all writers are really different animals. Everybody's, a book writer is a different person than a screenwriter, which is different than an animation writer. That's different from, a playwright.
Mhm.
Um, and it's all different. But I think the particular mindset you're talking about, I would question that thinking process. Uh, I think the only times that I might be worried about it is if I was going to do something that was extraordinarily political and there were
Mhm.
people out there who might shoot me.
Mhm.
Then maybe. But if I'm doing a creative piece, I'm not even thinking about that. You know,
Yeah.
there's no way there's any time to be thinking about stuff like that because there's so much that needs attention.
Mhm.
It's right in front of your eyes, that you need to stay focused on. And then if it's not in front of your eyes, it's certainly in the top of your brain. It's
Right.
always there.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
um, I think the issue comes down to a fear thing. Again, we're back to that.
Mhm.
I think that majority of people, frankly, almost everybody, um, operates from a foundation of fear. It's biologically a part of who we are. It's not a subjective reality. It's objective. Fear is real.
Mhm.
So um, how we're fearful, I guess, is it becomes a character issue, doesn't it?
It does,
How
yeah.
we deal with fear
Mhm.
would help define our character as a coward or a brave person. Brave people don't go out to do something brave, something happens and they react bravely.
Exactly. Unfortunately, I was able to get over that. But I'm thinking about like when I was a kid, say, junior high or high school, and kids would always try to act tough as well. If somebody broke into my house, I'd do this, I'd beat them up, I'd do that. And like you don't know what you would do when the moment comes. Whatever
Yeah,
you're going to do, you're just going to react and do it. You're not going to think
yeah,
about it. It's just going to be
yeah,
100% pure reaction. And I
right.
mean, I would like to think that had I been in New York on 9/11, I would have tried to help somebody. I would like to think I would be that person. But you
Yeah,
don't know until you're there and
yeah,
reacting to whatever happens. So I
yeah.
think that there's got to be some element of that in our writing where maybe we get to be the hero that we don't know if we would be in real life, or we get to do something that maybe we'd want to believe we could, but don't necessarily know that we would have.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're saying there is you got to write the story that you like,
Yeah. Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Or the movie or the play that you like. Um, I mean, my experience is that a good writer has a voice
Hmm.
that they constantly honor in every piece of material they do,
Right.
and they rearrange that voice in a multiple of creative ways. They can throw you off track if if you were looking, you know. If you work with somebody for an extended period of time, you get to see that really clearly
Right.
by the consistency and the material that they do.
Hmm.
And it's also, frankly, a very intimate perspective
Right.
because it is a creative perspective.
Hmm.
And so you can learn a lot about a person doing that for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, my acting uh, workshops, I worked with some people became film stars or television stars. In other words, I worked with really good people.
Hmm.
If I were to go back, many years ago, I went back and I talked to Harry and I said, if I could come back, I'd join your workshop. I got a perfect workshop for you, John. They're all working professionals. You'll love it. Oh my God, Harry, don't say that. Now I got to try to figure out a way to do it. But I couldn't get back. But yeah, anyway, it's a craft and you constantly work at it. And so whatever your art is, that's where it's at. And I think you really got to want it. I mean, that's really the important thing. So you want it so much that you're willing to trample on that fear, you know. But getting back to what you were actually saying, there was a comedian named Lord Buckley in the 50s,
Mhm.
and he had a piece that he did. At the end of it, he goes, "It all goes to prove when you get to it and you cannot do it, then there you jolly well are, aren't you?"
There you go. That's perfect. Absolutely
And
perfect.
I thought, yeah, that's where you are. And you don't know, like you say, until you're there, what's
Yeah.
going to happen,
Yeah.
you
I
know?
think I think we all just naturally want to think that we have that power and that we have the control and everything to do, but our adrenal glands have a lot more control over us in a situation like that than we really do.
Yeah, I think the only chance you have of overcoming that is if you're specifically trained
Yeah.
and eventually if you get in the field, as they would say, I guess, then you pretty much know what you're going to do then, and
Mhm.
that surely makes it a hell of a lot safer
Oh,
for you and
definitely. Yeah.
everybody else.
Right, right. Well,
you know
folks, check out Workshopping Your Truth, Unlock the Art of Storytelling. I've got the website in the show notes. Sign up for it. It's a great program. John, thank you so much for doing that and for coming on the show again. I always love our conversations.
Well, thank you, Scott, very much. I appreciate it. It's fun talking to you.
Absolutely.
I love it.
So we will see you guys in the next episode as we are on our road to episode 500 coming up very shortly. Who's going to be the guest? What's it going to be? I actually have no idea still. We'll find out soon enough. Cheers.